Marvel. The devastation of natural disasters begins. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 23 Suppression. At this moment, Tang Feng's eyes also began to gather a hot energy, and Tang Feng's eyes also shot out laser beams. Seeing this, the short man's subordinates also hurriedly dodged, and since the tall man couldn't dodge in time, the laser was directly hit on the armor. At this moment, the ground troops commanded by Colonel Hardy also arrived at the scene. "We have arrived at the battlefield. Please instruct." 99 Colonel Hardy also looked at the ground and gave the order, "All squads, attack the target immediately." Asgardian, "This is battlefield number 1. Will the guy in blue also attack?" I said, "Attack all targets." Colonel Hardy also shouted into the walkie-talkie. The ground and air troops also launched a general fire suppression at the three of them at the same time, and the tall man also lifted a pickup truck from the side and crashed it into the sky. Colonel Hardy also saw the situation, and the troops also rushed to dodge, but the other helicopter behind also failed to dodge and was hit by the propeller behind. The helicopter pilot was also thrown out by the centrifugal force. Tang Feng hurriedly saw the situation, grabbed the pilot, and put him on the ground. Tang Feng also asked, "Are you okay, Tilda?" Without waiting for the pilot to speak, even though the tall man's subordinates had already rushed over, Tang Feng quickly pushed the pilot away, but he was also abruptly punched. Colonel Hardy's helicopter also malfunctioned. "The helicopter is weightless. Prepare for an emergency landing. Prepare for an emergency landing." The wings brushed the ground and stopped, and Colonel Hardy walked out of the helicopter cockpit with difficulty. As for the ground troops, the situation was even more tragic. With the current firepower of human beings, it is impossible to cause substantial damage to the Krypton armor. Even under the suppression of firepower, this group of human troops are still like a lamb if they stay there. The short man's subordinates are also abruptly suppressed by the firepower, and a punch is to defeat these human troops a little. Soon, the human ground troops were almost wiped out, and not far away, Tang Feng was still fighting fiercely with the tall man. The two sides are constantly fighting, you come and I go back and forth, and you can't tell who is the winner for a while. Lightning 12, this is Asgardian. I want you to ignore what happened here, ignore your own people and attack with all your strength. Colonel Hardy also said on the walkie-talkie after getting out of the helicopter. After a while, a voice came from the other end of the walkie-talkie. Received. "It doesn't matter everyone, I wish you good luck." Colonel Hardy was also injured at this time, but he still took out a submachine gun with difficulty and prepared for battle. After seeing it, the short man also slowly walked towards Colonel Hardy very playfully. "The king." Soon the bullets in the submachine gun in Colonel Hardy's hand were also used up, and Colonel Hardy took out his pistol to attack again, but it was still useless. The short man also lifted the defense of the mask, looked at the injured Colonel Hardy in front of him with a playful expression, and walked towards Colonel Hardy little by little, and his desperate eyes slowly filled Colonel Hardy. But Colonel Hardy's dignity as a soldier also made him unable to back down. Chapter 24 Releasing the engine. Colonel Hardy also threw the pistol aside, slowly stood up, and took out a dagger from his waist. The short man also laughed. He also took out a dagger-like weapon and slowly said to Colonel Hardy, "A good way to die is your reward." Colonel Hardy was sweating profusely now, but he still gritted his teeth and rushed forward. Seeing that the two sides were about to fight each other, Tang Feng also flew up and pressed the short man to the ground immediately. Colonel Hardy was relieved when he saw this scene, but his willpower supported him and he still managed to escape with 060 and his comrades. And this short man's mask at this moment was also broken by Tang Feng, and suddenly, all kinds of noisy sounds and images poured into this short man's brain. The short man also covered his head in pain, and a roar of huge amounts of money reminded from a distance that the Tomahawk missile also flew towards the short man at a very fast speed. The short man also stretched out his hand, but this one of the best destructive weapons invented by human beings will not be blocked by a single person. The huge explosion swept the short man and the entire street. When the flames and smoke dispersed, the short man's armor was completely shattered. Just as the plane wanted to launch the second missile, an enemy plane from outer space also flew over it, and the fighter plane carrying the missile appeared very small in front of the spaceship. A laser was fired, and the fighter plane was also bombed into pieces. The spaceship slowly landed on the ground, and the tall man also slowly lifted the short man and returned to the interior of the spaceship under the welcome of his compatriots. The spaceship also took off and flew away from the Earth very quickly. The ground troops that came at this moment also approached Tang Feng little by little and surrounded Tang Feng. Tang Feng also sighed helplessly. Tang Feng slowly walked to the front. Strangely, no one came forward to stop Tang Feng. Colonel Hardy also walked in front of Tang Feng, looked at Tang Feng. He also slowly said to the surrounding army, "He is not our enemy." Tang Feng also smiled and slowly nodded to Colonel Hardy. "Thank you, Colonel Hardy," and then Tang Feng flew into the sky quickly. Inside the spaceship that Zod brought, General Zod's think tank is also showing General Zod a picture. The think tank said, "This is just a small problem. I already know where the code is. It wasn't in the flight device at all." Joel took the codex that recorded billions of human genes and stored it in every cell of Tang Feng along with the power. All the descendants of the Kryptonians are kept in the body of an alien refugee. General Zod also looked into the distance after hearing this, and General Zod also slowly said, "Does Tang Feng need his living body to take out the body code?" The group of experts also showed a strange smile and said, "No need." At this moment everyone turned to look at General Zod. General Zod also waved his hand and said to everyone, "Now, release the world engine and make the world's perception suffer." General Zod also took out a master control key and inserted it into the central control screen, and a series of dark words appeared on it. Chapter 25 Altering the Landscape. The huge numbers of spaceships that General Zod was in also abruptly separated. They flew in different directions towards Earth. Sitting in the command room on Earth, the explorer also told General Nick. The spaceship suddenly split into two, one of which flew east and the other went to the southern hemisphere. Dr. Hamilton also asked, "At what speed are they moving?" "They report close to Mach 24 and are moving steadily increasing, seeming to land somewhere in the Indian Ocean." At this moment, General Nick also looked very solemn. The spaceship passed by like a huge number of meteorite, and when it was about to get close, the round spaceship also suddenly opened three supports and crashed into the ground like a fork. General Nick also looked at the computer and muttered to himself, "Another spaceship is also landing." And at this moment another spaceship landed right in the center of the metropolis city. General Zod inside the spaceship also began to send an order, "Connect the Phantom device." The two spaceships fired an extremely large number of light beams towards the surface almost at the same time. Around the spaceship, gravity seemed to be reversed. The scene around the two spaceships is exactly the opposite. The spaceship located in the Indian Ocean crushes everything under the laser, and without a single fluctuation, the surface will be destroyed to a certain extent. The spaceship where General Zod is located in the center of the city is also radial, and the obstacles preventing him from rebuilding Krypton are somewhat cleared. General Nick also asked Dr. Hamilton, "What did they use to attack us?" Dr. Hamilton also muttered to himself, "It looks like some kind of gravity weapon. This weapon is interacting with their ship, and they are increasing the Earth's gravity, using molecular reactions to change the structure of the Earth's atmosphere." At this moment, Dr. Hamilton also paused and exclaimed, "My God, they are remodeling the landscape." One officer was also very puzzled and said, "What does that mean?" 99 Hamilton turned his head and said, "They are using planetary engineering to change the Earth's atmosphere and topography, turning the Earth into Krypton." 0 Ask for flowers. What will happen after that? General Nick asked Dr. Hamilton as well. "Based on this data, we will cease to exist." The walkie-talkie in the command center also rang, and a communicator also told General Nick after connecting, "We communicated with the General Control Tower. Colonel Hardy is heading here, and Superman will follow." 50. 0 Superman. General Nick was very puzzled. That alien. Everyone calls him that. The correspondent also introduced himself to General Nick. Soon Tang Feng sensed the command base where General Nick was. At the same time, a military helicopter brought the cylindrical alien spaceship that Tang Feng was riding in and slowly landed in front of General Nick. Lois also followed, said, "General, we have a plan." "Now," Dr. Hamilton also said curiously, "it won't be the same as I thought, will it?" 99 He came to Earth on this ship. Before Lois could finish speaking, Superman's voice echoed for a long time. Chapter 26 Phantom Zone Device. The ship is powered by the Ghost Device Zone, which can warp space, and Zod's ship uses the same technology, so if you can make two ships collide with each other, you can create a singularity, like a black hole. Dr. Hamilton also added. Tang Feng also nodded slightly and said, "If we succeed, they will theoretically be attracted." Dr. Hamilton 063 at this moment is also somewhat unbelievable. "Do you want to use this thing to blow them up?" Colonel Hardy also said at this time, "General, that ship weighs 17,000 pounds, and we can carry it on a C-17. "That's the plan," Colonel Hardy said firmly. Tang Feng also spoke at this time, "If I hadn't destroyed that machine in the Indian Ocean, the gravitational field would have continued to increase." General Nick also took a deep breath and nodded towards Tang Feng. Tang Feng turned around and flew into the sky with a bang like a cannonball. Inside the spaceship, General Zod also glanced at the radar composed of the memory sand, then turned to the assistant beside him and said, "Fiona, you will take command next, and I have to ensure the safety of the creation library." 35 Be nice to our old man. The Asgardian transport plane also took off from the capsule. Tang Feng was heading to the Indian Ocean, and Colonel Hardy also flew towards the metropolis with Louise and Dr. Hamilton. Around the transport plane, a fleet of F-type fighters formed a row to protect the transport plane layer by layer. General Zod also slowly walked out of the spaceship cabin. This time General Zod also slowly took off his mask. A noisy energy was still pouring into General Zod's brain, but this time it was only for a few seconds. General Zod clenched his fists and controlled the crazy information. Everything has returned to calm. General Zod at this moment has also been able to master the ability to fight on Earth. General Zod came to the creation library, inserted the master key, and then heard the female voice from the machine. The master key has been received, and the creation library has been activated. Joel's image appeared behind Zod again. "Stop Zod and seize the opportunity now," Joel slowly advised Zod. Zod also turned his head disdainfully and looked at Joel. "Do you still love preaching so much even if you die?" Even as an image, Joel slowly walked to General Zod and said, "I won't let you use a code like this." 95 General Zod laughed when he heard Joel's words, "But you have no way to stop me. The master key I used is releasing your control of this ship, which has now been handed over to me by me. Take control." 55 Ha 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 ha. General Zod also laughed arrogantly. 4.8 In the Indian Ocean, the surroundings of the Trident spacecraft are also shrouded in lightning, and the lasers emitted by the Trident spacecraft are constantly changing the surrounding landforms. The sea level is constantly stirring, and the Earth's crust has begun to vibrate and dislocate. Tang Feng at this moment is also constantly shuttled in the dark clouds of lightning, and soon the core of this Trident spacecraft is also exposed in front of Tang Feng. Chapter 27 Battle Tentacles. While the Trident-shaped spaceship is constantly changing the scenery, there are also extremely bad changes in the atmosphere. Under the dark clouds, lightning is constantly falling, and Tang Feng is also constantly avoiding the sudden lightning, but the clouds are too dense. With a bang, lightning struck again, and Tang Feng was also struck by lightning. Tang Feng also fell from the sky into the sea, and the falling waves also swept Tang Feng in an instant. But for Tang Feng, the power of this lightning is still insufficient and may cause harm to him. After a while, Tang Feng came out of the ocean and came to the core area below the Trident spaceship, where the laser was being released. Tang Feng was also floating in the air. The sphere-shaped core 09 at this time was also constantly exuding energy. Due to the overflow of huge amounts of energy, a layer of energy protection was vaguely formed around the core. Tang Feng also knew that time was imminent, and he rushed to crush the core. In this way, Tang Feng can also rush to the metropolis to carry out the collision and explosion of the spacecraft. But just as Tang Feng was about to touch the protective cover outside the core, the spherical core suddenly stretched out 3 tentacles. Huge amounts of tentacles also stretched out towards Tang Feng. Tang Feng also saw the tentacles flying towards him quickly, so he quickly avoided them and flew into the sky. But the speed of the tentacles was too fast, and the 3 tentacles also followed Tang Feng, steadily rising into the sky, and soon wrapped around Tang Feng's body. Tang Feng also struggled to break free, and Tang Feng at this moment also discovered that these huge amounts of tentacles were actually composed of the sand of memory. The tentacles that Tang Feng released quickly gathered together, and these tentacles were like living objects. He was looking at Tang Feng in front of him. Tang Feng also took a deep breath. If he couldn't remove even this small obstacle, what would he talk about protecting the earth? As Tang Feng stepped into the void, the air suddenly split open as Tang Feng stepped on it. Tang Feng also rushed towards the 3 tentacles in front of him very quickly. These tentacles also moved at this moment, and the 3 tentacles also displayed a posture that surrounded Tang Feng through different action directions and action modes. Seeing that Tang Feng is about to meet these tentacles head-on, Tang Feng also reached out and grabbed one of the tentacles. After Tang Feng grabbed one of the tentacles, Tang Feng also quickly followed the pull of the tentacle and changed its direction. The other 2 tentacles also rubbed against Tang Feng's body. Tang Feng is also pulling the tentacles that are constantly flying towards the central area. While flying, Tang Feng's eyes were also preparing hot lasers. After the first attack failed, the 2 tentacles also adjusted their direction and caught up with him. Seeing these tentacles chasing Tang Feng again, Tang Feng also turned around and shot a laser towards the tail of the tentacles in his eyes. There was a bang, and the tentacles that Tang Feng was holding were also torn off by the roots. Tang Feng also held his tentacles and threw them towards the energy shield in front of him. At that moment, the weapon used to protect the core also became the key with which Tang Feng opened the protection. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28: The Terrible Gravity Field. At this moment, the tentacle that Tang Feng broke also flew towards the protective cover outside the core like a sharp sword, penetrating deeply into the protective cover. But Tang Feng at this moment was also caught in his arms by the tentacles that reached out to him. Tang Feng is also working hard in the air to fight and pull each other with these 2 tentacles. Drink. Tang Feng at this moment is also a roar. The force of the core drives or exerts force together, and will pull the 2 tentacles that bind him. Past. Tang Feng also punched hard, hitting the tentacle inserted into the energy shield. The tentacles were also inserted into the core, and the zzzz electric current sounded. The tentacles that bound Tang Feng also suddenly lost their power and fell down. The sound of explosion also sounded. At this moment, the force of human fighter jets also arrived near the Trident spacecraft located in Metropolis. Lightning One is requesting the launch of Hell missiles. The intercom in the control room also rang. General Nick also quickly picked up the walkie-talkie and said, "Lightning One, you can shoot. You can shoot Tilda. Send a damage report if you can," and the call ends. The combat army that received the order also fired Hell missiles at the Trident spaceship. The Hell missile also flew towards the Trident spaceship quickly, but when the missiles were about to hit the Trident spaceship, all the missiles fell to the ground one after another. The missile was also hitting the buildings of the Metropolis and the chaotic explosion sounded. And since things happened so quickly, the army had no time to completely evacuate the citizens of the Metropolis. At this moment, screams one after another on the street also sounded. "Report to the command center. Report to the command center. All missiles missed their targets." At this moment, Dr. Hamilton, who was sitting on the transport plane, also noticed. Dr. Hamilton also took the walkie-talkie and said, "The gravitational field generated around the Trident spaceship is pulling all the missiles down. We have to go." "Get closer." The fighter planes that received the instructions also flew towards the Trident spacecraft one after another, But Dr. Hamilton still underestimated the power of the gravitational field around the Trident spacecraft. The fighter planes that flew towards the Trident spacecraft began to sway constantly due to the weight, and some of them were even directly dragged down and crashed on top of the Trident spacecraft. A fighter plane also saw that the situation was not right, and it was also very urgent to get up to escape, but it was too late, and the fighter plane was also pulled by the gravitational field and flew towards the ground. When it was about to approach the ground, the influence of the gravitational field finally disappeared, and the pilot quickly stopped the plane, but among the towering metropolis, there was no range for the fighter planes to pass. The fighter plane also rubbed, whanged, against a building and exploded. For a time, the combat power in the air was also running out. The people on the ground who were being evacuated were also stunned when they saw the scene in front of them that was like the end of the day. The police officers who were evacuating the crowd on the ground also shouted, "Hurry up, hurry up. Don't look back." The effect of the gravitational field is also constantly spreading towards the urban area of the metropolis at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 29 Desperation Strikes. The effect of the gravitational field is constantly spreading, and the buildings in the urban area of the metropolis are also beginning to vibrate and break little by little. The glass of the skyscrapers also began to break one after another, the foundations were broken, and a building collapsed on the street where the crowd was evacuated. The crowd on the street also began to flee frantically. Inside the Trident ship, Joel also persuaded General Zod and said, "Zod, our clansmen can coexist peacefully with Earthlings. Why not give it a try? So, are you going to let our 067 people spend years to adapt to the Earth's environment, just like Tang Feng?" General Zod said angrily, "You know what? You're talking about genocide," Joel said. General Zod also laughed and said to Joel, "Yes, I'm still arguing with a ghost." After speaking, he turned around and continued to look at the Earth that was being changed and destroyed. "We are all ghosts, can't you see that? Krypton as you know it no longer exists." General Zod at this time, Ajay, was also very impatient. He called out the spaceship's intelligence system and said to the system, "Computer, can you eliminate this annoying intruder?" The mechanical female voice sounded again. "Elimination is beginning." Joel also said, "You are not allowed to succeed, Zod. I can't bear to continue this debate and I'm going to start destroying it." General Zod said to the computer, "Actually, you always know that even if I keep quiet, it won't change any facts. Tang Feng is stronger than you and will finish what we started. I can assure you," Joel said firmly at this time. Joel's words also seemed to touch General Zod's reverse scale. Zod also turned around, walked to Joel's image, and said, "Tell me, you have Joel's memory and his body. Can you feel his pain?" 99 I will take out the life code from Tang Feng's body and use his corpse as the basis to rebuild Krypton. After speaking, General Zod forcefully pressed the master control key. Joel's image also began to dissipate little by little, and was finally completely erased. After Joel's image completely dissipated, there seemed to be something flashing in General Zod's eyes. The reconnaissance plane that Joel brought at this time was also slowly activated. At this moment, under the collapsed building of the metropolis, many people were also crushed under the rubble. A black man was also anxiously searching for his wife. When he found that his wife was buried under the rubble but still alive, his heart was also pleasantly surprised. The black man also found an iron bar and pushed hard on the cement that was pressing on his wife. On the Asgardian transport plane, Colonel Hardy also said on the walkie-talkie, "Headquarters, this is the Asgardian. Can we drop bombs?" General Nick also said, "Not yet, we haven't received any news from Tang Feng, just wait." The spread of the gravitational field is also getting closer and closer to the black man, and the feeling of despair and helplessness is also gradually covering his eyes. Chapter 30. On the surface of the Indian Ocean, Tang was also hit by the energy generated by the huge explosion and flew backwards. After a while, the Trident spacecraft above the Indian Ocean also began to disintegrate a little, and the energy stopped overflowing. Tang Feng also fell on a beach. Tang Feng slowly opened his eyes and shook his head to wake himself up more. Tang Feng also looked forward. The effect of the gravitational field completely disappeared, and the remains of the Trident spacecraft also fell into the vast Indian Ocean. The sun fell on Tang Feng's body, and Tang Feng also felt a warm current flowing along his body. Tang Feng also supported his body and stood up. Tang Feng raised his head and looked at the dark clouds that did not disperse. Tang Feng also knew that destroying this Trident spacecraft was just the beginning. In the center of the metropolis city, the gravitational field that was about to devour the black man also suddenly dissipated. On the Asgardian in the sky, Colonel Hardy also encountered this phenomenon and said in surprise, "It did." Colonel Hardy also took the walkie-talkie at this time and said to the command, "Command, this is the Asgardian. We have set off now and are heading to the target point. 99 God bless you, Asgardian, you can now prepare to drop bombs." General Nick General said. Colonel Hardy turned his head to Dr. Hamilton and said, "Now the final race. Now it's up to you and Miss Louise." Dr. Hamilton also led Louise Lois to the place where the space capsule was placed. Louise Lois also took out the master key that Tang Feng gave her, ready to insert it, but when Louise put in the key, an inexplicable electric current repulsion also began to occur. Colonel Hardy also asked through the walkie-talkie, "Are the officers in charge ready? Can bombs be dropped?" 99 Dr. Hamilton also said no. Something went wrong and it shouldn't have been like this. Colonel Hardy also told his deputy that you will control the plane, and then ran towards the place where the space capsule was stored. At this time, General Zod's subordinate Fiona on the Trident spaceship also found the plane heading towards her. Colonel Hardy soon came to the cockpit at the back, not ready to drop bombs. "What's going on?" Dr. Hamilton also said. There was a little problem. Suddenly, the plane trembled violently, and Colonel Hardy also saw through the tail of the plane that the cruise fighter planes were also shot down. An alien spaceship also slowly appeared in front of Colonel Hardy and others, and the driver of this alien spaceship was General Zod. General Zod also ordered the spaceship, aim at which plane to target. Energy quickly gathered on the alien spaceship's weapons, and it didn't take long before a mechanical female voice sounded, "Target locked." The blue light is also focused on the alien spaceship's weapons. At this moment, the sound of bursts of sonic booms was also heard, and Tang Feng was rushing towards the spaceship at an extremely fast speed. Tang Feng suddenly plunged into the spaceship, and because of the impact, the laser did not hit the plane for a long time. Chapter 31 Destroyed. Tang Feng also rushed into the spaceship immediately, and a hot energy began to gather in Tang Feng's eyes. General Zod, who was sitting in the driver's seat, also said to Tang Feng, "Stop, if you destroy this ship, you will destroy Krypton's last chance." Tang Feng's words also made Tang Feng tremble slightly, and the energy in his eyes dissipated. But this was only a brief moment. Tang Feng also shouted to General Zod 067, "Krypton once got its chance." Tang Feng's eyes also shot out a hot light, and the powerful laser was also slashing at the alien spaceship. The spaceship also slowly fell towards the ground, and things in the vault of creation also became a mess. General Zod's subordinate Fiona also saw that the situation was wrong, so she got into the escape capsule and flew towards the transport plane. At this moment, Dr. Hamilton also seemed to have thought of something, and slowly walked towards the space capsule. Dr. Hamilton also put his hands on the space capsule and gently turned it. The master key was also inserted into the space capsule immediately, and the outer cover of the space capsule was also closed. At this moment, a soldier also shouted, "Dodge, danger!" Fiona also rushed towards the space capsule, and Louise and Dr. Hamilton were also thrown to the ground. Louise was also close to throwing the plane. Colonel Hardy also picked up a shell that was constantly bombarding Fiona, but this had absolutely no way to cause harm to Fiona. Colonel Hardy did not choose to confront it this time either. Colonel Hardy understood Dr. Hamilton's gaze and hurried to the cockpit. Fiona was also fooled and chased Colonel Hardy all the way. At this moment, Dr. Hamilton stood up with difficulty and pressed the master key hard. A blue light flashed on the spaceship. Colonel Hardy also said to Fiona, "A good way to die is your reward." 99 Fiona also showed a curious look. Colonel Hardy steered the plane and collided with the spaceship. At this moment, the plane carrying the space capsule turned out to be a weapon to destroy the Trident spaceship. and it is also said that the powerful centrifugal force caused Louise to pull the plane out and fall. The plane collided with the Trident spacecraft, and the black hole also began to produce, and everything was slowly sucked into it. At this moment, Tang Feng, who was on the ground, had just lifted the last cement board pressing on him. When he saw Louise falling from the sky, Tang Feng didn't think too much and just flew into the sky. Tang Feng also hugged Louise, but the pull of the black hole also affected Tang Feng. Tang Feng, who was in the air, was also dragged down a bit. Drink! Tang Feng shouted. A burst of strong 4.8 energy erupted from his whole body, and finally escaped the gravitational range of the black hole and flew towards the ground. After the black hole swallowed the Trident spacecraft, it closed, and at this moment, Tang Feng also slowly brought Louise back to the ground. An inexplicable feeling also began to emerge in the minds of Tang Feng and Louise. The crowd on the ground also looked at the superhero who fell from the sky, and their eyes were full of respect and curiosity. Chapter 32 The Lost Zud. Just when everyone thought the crisis was over, in the collapsed ruins, there was a strange movement. The sound of bang bang a bang came from among the ruins. Tang Feng and Louise also turned their heads to look at the ruins, and saw that the rubble and stones in the ruins at this moment began to float into the sky as if their gravity had been reversed. Tang Feng also let go of Louis a little and walked towards the ruins where there was a change. Tang Feng slowly walked over, and at this moment, several huge amounts of concrete were also scattered around, and at this moment, the people under the ruins also appeared. And this person is Krypton SO9th military commander, General Zud. General Zud was also kneeling on the ground at this moment, holding a handful of ashes in his hand. Seeing Tang Feng flying over, General Zud also slowly raised his head and said to Tang Feng, "Look at this, we could have built a new Krypton here, but you chose humans instead of your clan. I exist to protect Krypton, and this is my destiny. Everything I do, no matter how violent or cruel, is to bring a better life to my clan, but now I have no clan. My soul, you took away my soul." After finishing speaking, General Zud flew towards Tang Feng in front of him without warning. General Zud's shoulder also hit Tang Feng's chest, knocking Tang Feng back a distance of dozens of meters. The ground was also dragged by Tang Feng into a ravine. At this moment, General Zud slowly walked towards Tang Feng and said to Tang Feng as he walked, "I want to make them suffer. Tang Feng, I want to make them suffer. Your dear people suffer. I will take away the people you value from your side one by one." Tang Feng also struggled to hold on and said to the general he was doing, "You are a monster, Zud, you won't succeed, I will stop you." 35 Tang Feng also slowly flew against the ground, and suddenly Tang Feng also rushed to push General Zud in front of him into a building that had not been destroyed. In the sky, Tang Feng and General Zud also fought each other, but Zud, who was born as a warrior, actually surpassed Tang Feng in his fighting skills. Tang Feng was also thrown into an office, and General Zud also followed and fell not far from Tang Feng. Drink. General Zud also began to roar, and in his eyes, hot power was constantly converging. Obviously, General Zud was not very proficient in this skill, and General Zud's eyes suddenly shot out laser beams, but this scorching power was too powerful, and General Zud could not control such power perfectly. Laser beams also shot out randomly at the building, and the ground where Tang Feng was located was pierced through and collapsed, and Tang Feng at this moment was not worried about being affected at all, but just floated in front of Zud. After a while, the hot power also dissipated from General Zud's eyes. General Zud also held his head with both hands, slowly opened his eyes, and looked at Tang Feng in front of him. But at this moment the building is already in danger. Chapter 33 Chaos begins. After being swept by the laser, the structure of the building was also destroyed into pieces. Rocks and bricks constantly fell towards the bottom, and the building began to shake. General Zud also saw that the building was about to collapse, and jumped off the building first. Tang Feng also flew after him, and the building collapsed at this moment. But Tang Feng and General Zud also flew out of the building one after another, but the aftershocks and debris of the building still affected the two of them. Both of them fell to the ground. Tang Feng slowly stood up from the ruins, But this was General Zod, who had been waiting for Tang Feng for a long time. General Zod also kicked a fuel tanker away, while Tang Feng was just lightly dodging, that is, avoiding the flying fuel tanker. The fuel tanker also exploded violently when it hit the building behind. After the explosion, Tang Feng and General Zod also quarreled. General Zod also took the initiative to throw a fist at Tang Feng. Tang Feng also hurriedly stretched out his hand to stop General Zod's offensive, and also punched General Zod's abdomen. Because Tang Feng and General Zod's powers are extremely terrifying, every time they wave their fists, they will make the sound of sonic rubbing against the air and explode. Both sides constantly attack the other side. Tang Feng also punched General Zod, just when Tang Feng wanted to chase him. General Zod also stabilized his body in the air in time, grabbed a car from the side, and threw it towards Tang Feng. Tang Feng also had no time to dodge due to inertia and was crushed. Tang Feng also pushed the car with one hand, but it was only off for a short time, and General Zod had already flown up and moved toward Tang Feng's chest. Just fly. Tang Feng also crashed deeply into the concrete floor, and the general who was doing it suddenly rushed over, lifted Tang Feng up, and threw him into the sky. And Tang Feng also floated into the air in time to stabilize his body. Now there is only one ending, either you die, or I die, General Zod said as he looked at Tang Feng. Tang Feng also looked at General Zod. At this moment, General Zod also roared and crawled like a spider on the building like a beast. Tang Feng also rushed towards General Zod. The two collided like thunder and fire. The huge amount of impact also sent both of them flying. General Zod also landed on a building under construction. Tang Feng also stood up and flew towards General Zod's location. Just as Tang Feng had just landed, General Zod lifted a steel bar and swung towards Tang Feng. Tang Feng also hurriedly released his eye lasers and fired them out, but it was too late and Tang Feng was still knocked to the ground. At this moment, General Zod, of Zhao, was also very angry and said to Tang Feng in front of him, vertical bar I was born a warrior, I spent my entire life training my senses, what about you? Where are you training? On the farm tilde. General Zod also squatted down, and Tang Feng could also sense that the energy aura overflowing from General Zod was getting stronger and stronger. At this moment, General Zod's body also began to make a cocooning sound. Chapter 34, The Power of Perception. General Zod, who was squatting on the ground, also grabbed his armor, and with his roar, General Zod also tore his armor and threw it aside. Tang Feng could also clearly feel that the gravity field around General Zod had also changed. The armor slowly floated up with General Zod, and Tang Feng was also very surprised because General Zod could also fly. But even if he was surprised, Tang Feng still wanted to defeat this General Zod, and General Zod, who was suspended in the air, slowly lowered his head and looked at Tang Feng in front of him. Tang Feng also stared at him. Tang Feng at this moment he also knew that this General Zod had completely adapted to the Earth's environment and had to destroy this General Zod as soon as possible. Tang Feng was also the first to charge the 070 army towards Zod in the air. At this moment, the metropolis has completely turned into a battlefield for these two people. Tang Feng and General Zod also shuttled between high-rise buildings. Every time they punched, the opponent who was hit would fly a very long distance. General Zod and Tang Feng were also chasing after me, completely indistinguishable. At the corner of a building, Tang Feng suddenly couldn't see General Zod. Just when Tang Feng wanted to see where this General Zod was, General Zod suddenly rushed out of the blind spot of Tang Feng's line of sight. General Zod also dragged Tang Feng across several buildings. Tang Feng also counterattacked General Zod very quickly. A punch was thrown out, and General Zod also punched out with an uppercut. I got Tang Feng. I thought that the two of them would fly upside down, but at this moment, General Zod also burst out with extremely powerful combat power. He directly grabbed Tang Feng's cloak and threw Tang Feng into the atmosphere while spinning in the air. General Zod also rushed over directly, and the two had entangled each other and flew out of the atmosphere. General Zod grabbed a satellite, and Tang Feng was suspended in front of General Zod. Drink. General Zod also roared and threw the satellite towards Tang Feng. The two sides were thrown, into the atmosphere again. The crowd in the metropolis also saw this strange sight. Many meteorites fell from the sky, and Tang Feng and General Zod were constantly rubbing against each other in the atmosphere like a fireball. The two sides also entangled each other and fell into a factory, and the scene that Tang Feng feared most also happened. There are still civilians in this factory who have not been evacuated. Tang Feng also took the lead in rushing towards General Zod, and immediately blocked General Zod's body from behind, leaving General Zod completely motionless at this moment. General Zod also saw these civilians who had not yet evacuated, and General Zod also said to Tang Feng, "If you really love these people so much." Before General Zod could finish speaking, two hot lasers shot out from his eyes. Tang Feng also hurriedly controlled General Zod's head to prevent the hot laser from hitting the civilians. Tang Feng also shouted, "No, stop." Tang Feng is also constantly fighting with General Zod, but seeing that this hot laser is about to hit these civilians, Tang Feng's heart is also very tormented. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 ends. At this moment, Tang Feng thought hard. General Zod was already the only one of his kind as a Kryptonian. If even General Zod were to die, his entire clan would be destroyed. But when he saw that General Zod's eye lasers were about to hit the civilians who hadn't escaped, Tang Feng didn't think too much. Tang Feng's arms holding General Zod also suddenly exerted force. Suddenly, General Zod's neck twisted twice. No matter how strong General Zod's body is, after receiving this kind of injury, he still loses his breath of life. The energy from General Zod's eyes also dissipated. The body also fell to the ground. Tang Feng also knelt on the ground, roaring towards the sky. After a few weeks, General Nick was also driving on his way to Washington, when suddenly an unmanned reconnaissance plane fell in the sky, directly in front of General Nick's car. But General Nick didn't seem to be afraid at all, and General Nick also got out of the car and said cursingly, "You are an idiot." Tang Feng also slowly walked out from behind the reconnaissance plane. Tang Feng said to General Nick, "I know you want to investigate my location. 99 inches. Did you know that this reconnaissance plane costs $12 million just for the shell?" General Nick said angrily, but Tang Feng still smiled at General Nick and said, "That's not the case now. I know you want to find me there, but you can't, so don't waste your time." General Nick's expression also became serious. General Nick said to Tang Feng, "Then let me ask you a question. How do we know that one day you won't be interested in suddenly attacking the United States?" Tang Feng also pointed to the back and said to General Nick, "I live in Kansas, General. How could I attack my own homeland?" "Listen, General, I'm here to help, but I have to do things my way." "But General, you have to persuade Washington." After hearing Tang Feng's words, General Nick was also very helpless. General Nick shook his head and said, "Even if I don't want to, I still have to persuade them." "But why do you think they will listen?" #. Tang Feng also smiled and shook his head and said, "I don't know the General, so I think I can only rely on you." After speaking, Tang Feng also flew into the sky. General Nick also saw that the female officer accompanying him was smiling constantly, and General Nick also asked, "What are you laughing at, Captain?" The female officer also reacted, shook her head at General Nick and said, "There is no general, just, I think you are very sexy." After listening to the female captain, General Nick also felt angry and funny, shook his head at the female officer and said, "Don't smile here, get in the car quickly." And at this moment, because of the disorder caused by the previous in the battle between Superman and General Zod, countless people were affected by the gravity field of the Trident and the battle between Tang Feng and Zod. As a result, many people lost their lives. A few months ago, a man was also driving to see a horrible scene in Metropolis for a long time. Chapter 36 Bruce Wayne. While Tang Feng and General Zod were fighting, a rich businessman's company was set up in the Metropolis. "Hey, Jack, did you hear me? I want everyone to evacuate the company building now. Hurry up." The rich businessman also shouted on the phone, and Jack, who answered the phone, was also sluggishly looking at the collapsing buildings outside the window, and the other end of the phone was also urging, which made 070 Jack react. Jack also replied, "I understand." Then he quickly hung up the phone and said to the company employees, "God, hurry up. Hurry up everyone. Let's get out of this building." The rich businessman also drove towards the building, but the congestion on the road and constant explosions constantly obstructed the rich businessman's path. Soon, a group of people also blocked the rich businessman's way. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the sky. The rich businessman also slowly stopped the car and looked at the sky. The Trident spaceship also exploded and was drawn into the sky, sucked into the black hole. With the disappearance of the Trident spaceship, the battle between Tang Feng and General Zod also began. The laser explosion and the direct collision of forces affected the surrounding buildings. When the rich businessman hurriedly arrived, the building was completely destroyed and everything turned into nothing. The rich businessman also shouted Jack's name. After the smoke cleared, the rich businessman also ran towards the ruins of the building. There were also several homeless people on the road. The children who survived the disaster were also led by the police and began to evacuate. At this moment, the painful cry of a man also attracted the attention of the rich businessman. The rich businessman also ran along the cry and found a man with his legs pressed under the rubble, and this man is an employee of the rich trading company. The rich businessman also ran over in a hurry. The man's expression was very frightened, and the rich businessman tried his best to comfort him. The rich businessman saw the man's license plate and hurriedly said, "Wallace, does everyone call you Wally?" The man was also frightened and said to the rich businessman, "My legs are no longer conscious. I can't feel that I have legs." The rich businessman also shouted, "Someone here needs help, come quickly." The two policemen rushed over, and the three of them also rescued the man from under the rubble. Boom! At this moment, a damaged building was about to collapse, and there was a little girl standing on the ground. The rich businessman hurried over and pulled the little girl out. The rich businessman also asked the little girl, "Hey, what's your name? Where are your parents?" The little girl was dumbfounded and pointed at the collapsed ruins. The rich businessman was also very angry at this moment. He looked at Tang Feng and General Zod who were fighting fiercely in the sky, and his eyes were full of hatred. And the true identity of this 4.8 rich businessman is the famous Bruce Wayne. During the day, he is the second-generation rich man and playboy in the eyes of others. At night, he is the Dark Knight who terrifies criminals, Batman. From then on, Bruce Wayne blamed this disaster on Tang Feng, and Bruce Wayne, who was fighting against criminals, also had a new goal. Chapter 37 After the disaster. 18 months after the battle between Tang Feng and Zod, somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, in an aboriginal village, two young men also took a small raft and slowly came to the wreckage of the spaceship that was broken during the battle. In this small barren village, the wreckage of the spaceship that fell from the sky also made them very scared, and the local people did not dare to approach it at all. However, due to the compulsion of life, these two young men just wanted to reach the wreckage of the spaceship to see if they could find any valuable items. The two of them sat on a small raft and slowly floated to the edge of the wreckage of the spaceship. One of the young men also said that a rope was tied to his body, and then nodded to the companion beside him. The young man also slowly dived towards the bottom of the sea, but due to the obstruction of sight, the young man could not see much. He also took a turn in the sea, thinking that there was nothing of value, and wanted to call his companions to come and pull him out. But at this moment, a faint green light came out from the wreckage of the ship at the bottom of the sea. The young man was also curious and swam towards the place where the green light was emitted. The young man also slowly lifted up the surrounding wreckage, and a piece of light like a green gem was exposed under the ground of the wreckage of the spaceship. Seeing this, the young man was also very excited. He thought that this thing must be very valuable, and he also wanted to take it ashore, but the size of this green gem was too large. The young man tried many times but couldn't do anything. In desperation, the young man could only pick up a broken green gem that had fallen from the side, and then let his companions pick it up. The young man took this green gem and thought of a way to convey the message, and this thing caught Bruce Wayne's attention. After receiving the news, Bruce Wayne hurried to this small town and bought this green gem from the young man at a price he couldn't refuse. This young man only thinks that this green gem is a valuable thing, but Bruce Wayne at this moment truly knows how powerful this humble stone is. During this period of time, Bruce Wayne has been constantly researching how to cause harm to Tang Feng and defeat Tang Feng. And if you want to hurt Tang Feng's almost invincible body, only this inconspicuous green gem can do it. And the name of this stone is kryptonite. Kryptonite is Superman's hometown, the rubble after the explosion of Krypton, which is the ultimate weakness of Superman and most Kryptonians. The mystery of this stone was also discovered after Bruce Wayne's constant research and experiments. This piece of kryptonite is not effective for Kryptonians without super ability, but for Kryptonians with super ability, it will first make it painful and weak, and prolonged contact will cause death. Bruce Wayne also brought it back to Gotham City, his secret base, the Batcave, ready for further research. And at this moment, Tang Feng also arrived at the White House. Chapter 38 Graffiti. At this time, Tang Feng was also wearing that blue shirt, and the red cloak behind him was also very eye-catching. Tang Feng slowly fell from the air towards the gate of the White House. The entrance of the White House was already full of people, and these people were holding various signs and waiting for Tang Feng to come. But these are not fans of Tang Feng. These people are all because when Tang Feng and General Zod fought, the building collapsed and many people were displaced and their homes were destroyed. The purpose of Tang Feng coming to the White House this time is also because the U.S. Congress needs to hold a trial for Tang Feng. Tang Feng also followed the officials waiting for him at the gate to the White House, and the enthusiasm of the people at the gate who wanted to get justice was also very high. Go Wuking also looked at Tang Feng and said, "Mr. Tang Feng, it's time to call you Superman. We can't judge whether you will threaten the safety of Earth in the future, but the question before us now, when you and your fellow Kryptonians were fighting on our planet, do you know how many people were displaced and lost their loved ones because of your fighting? So we will also make some relevant restrictions on your existence and life on Earth. I don't know if you can." Before Wuking could finish speaking, Tang Feng's ears moved. Tang Feng also heard it, and there was also a mechanical clicking sound not far from here. "It's a bomb." Tang Feng also felt that the sound came from a bomb with enormous amounts of power, and the explosion produced by this bomb was enough to spread to the entire White House. Tang Feng also realized that the matter was urgent and planned to Tang Feng immediately go to find the bomb, but at this time Tang Feng's reaction was too late. Before Tang Feng moved his body, the bomb had already exploded, and the extremely fast speed made Tang Feng unable to save anyone in this room. Boom! Huge amounts of explosions also occurred inside the White House, and the surrounding protesters were also frightened by the explosion. When the smoke from the explosion slowly dissipated, Tang Feng was left alone in the White House. Such a scene also made these people who hated Tang Feng even more hostile towards Tang Feng. The surroundings also became noisy, and everyone condemned Tang Feng's behavior. And Tang Feng couldn't bear such a feeling. It's also a step on the ground with both feet and flew into the sky. In a park in the center of the metropolis, a huge bronze statue of Tang Feng as Superman also stands after the battle between Tang Feng and General Zod. Tang Feng saved the United States and saved the Earth, which also made the president of the metropolis especially grateful for this matter. The bronze statue of Superman was also erected in the central orchard of the metropolis. A middle-aged man in a wheelchair also pushed the wheelchair and slowly approached the Superman statue. The man was holding a bunch of flowers in his hand. The middle-aged man raised his head and looked at the huge Superman statue. He also gently placed the flowers in his hand on the table. Later, the middle-aged man in the wheelchair had his legs amputated in half. But the middle-aged man still grabbed the statue and climbed to the top of the statue. Chapter 39. At this moment, although the middle-aged man lost his legs, at this moment he also showed unusual agility, and the man climbed to the top of the Superman statue just by leaning on his arms. The man also sat on the head of the Superman statue, took out a can of paint from his bag, sprayed Superman on the top of the Superman statue, and rolled out of the ground. Deedee, deedee, and the police car siren also rushed to the Superman statue. Several police officers also got out of the police car and arrested the man. When the police took him away again, the man kept swearing at Tang Feng. Bruce Wayne, who was in the company, also saw the report of the White House explosion on TV, and then, the graffiti man on the Superman statue also appeared on the 073 News. Bruce Wayne also recognized the man who lost his legs, the employee he rescued from the rubble at that time. Gotham City at night. Since the appearance of Batman, the criminals in Gotham City also seem to be shrouded in a shadow. On the dark street, a Russian man was also running wildly. The sound of clattering and flapping wings constantly sounds. This Russian man also fled into a sewer in a panic, and the dim light of the sewer also made the atmosphere more infiltrating. Suddenly, the lights in the sewer also suddenly went out, and bats roared and flew out of the cave. And what followed was a burly man dressed as a bat. Batman also directly subdued the Russian man, and then said to him, "Where are the remaining stones?" The Russian man also shook his head and said, "I don't know. I don't know anything." 99 Batman also punched the man in the stomach. "Don't say anything." The Russian man still gritted his teeth and said nothing. At this moment, Batman also took out a scorching bat dart and said to the man slowly, "I advise you not to resist. This taste is not good." 35 The man's shout echoed in the darkness. The next day, in Bruce Wayne's Batcave, the housekeeper Alfred also turned on the TV, and the local news of Gotham City was also playing on the TV. In the news, the host and the guests are constantly arguing about whether the vigilante's behavior is correct, and this guest also directly said, "This so-called Batman is a trick, and fighting crime is basically to satisfy his boring and perverted heart. What he did is completely illegal." After seeing it, the housekeeper Afu also joked with Bruce Wayne, "Mr. Wayne, I see if your way of doing things needs to be improved." At this time, Bruce Wayne was also busy with himself, ignoring Afu, and Afu said again, "How is that thing going?" Bruce Wayne at this time also raised his head and said to Afu, "I have found the location of the rest of the kryptonite, and now someone has transported it away." Afu also nodded and said, "Mr. Wayne, are you going to start?" Chapter 40 The next plan. Metropolitan City Center. The remains of the original spacecraft were also protected by layers of radioactive material because it could not be disposed of in time, and because the post-disaster reconstruction requires a lot of manpower and material resources. The U.S. government has no additional funds to study the remains. Because of this, the U.S. government also decided to invite some businessmen to conduct research on the remains of this alien spacecraft. And it was the famous Lex Luthor who finally got it right through an auction. Luthor is a billionaire, business tycoon, philanthropist, inventor, statesman who likes to use strategic thinking to gain profit, power, status, a human supremacist, and one of the smartest people in the world. He also kept the project a secret. After 10 months of searching, Lex Luthor finally found the lost reconnaissance plane and the body of General Zod. Lex Luthor's ill will towards Superman does not stop at words. He used his astonishing wealth and wisdom to construct a god-killing plan that made Superman doomed. For this reason, he disregards the basic laws and morals of the world, and doesn't take it seriously, thinking that the world simply can't keep up with him. The peak of his thinking, and this plan is just beginning. At this moment, Tang Feng also made slight modifications to the facial muscles through precise muscle control. Although the appearance is still similar, ordinary people can't recognize Tang Feng as Superman at all. After the General Zod incident, the relationship between Tang Feng and Louise also developed by leaps and bounds. At this time, the two have also become boyfriend and girlfriend. In Tang Feng's mansion, Tang Feng's mother, Masha, also said to Tang Feng, "What are you going to do when you don't save the world? Have you ever thought about this?" Tang Feng also smiled and said to his mother, This is definitely there. I think I should find a place that can inform me well now. When people are in danger, when I have to go to dangerous places, I start to wonder." Daily Headquarters Planet 0#. At this moment, the Daily Building Planet has also been rebuilt, and a man said to Louise, "Hey, Louise, when are you going to accept my invitation? Look, it's 2 ball games tonight. tickets. Do you want to go with me? Louise also said with contempt, I think you should go with that young intern, since there will be a greater chance. 0. At this time, the editor-in-chief of the newspaper also came over. Lunbit, Lois, come and meet our new member, take him for a walk, he is Tang Feng, wish him good luck. 35. Louise was also very excited about Tang Feng's arrival. Louise also stood up from her seat with a smile and extended her hand towards Tang Feng and said, I'm Louise Lois, welcome to the Daily Planet. 99. Tang Feng also said, I am very happy to join you Louise. Tang Feng and Louise also looked at each other and smiled. At the same time, Lex Luthor also entered the Lost reconnaissance plane, and the big conspiracy brewed by Lex Luthor will officially begin for a long time. Chapter 41. Going to dinner. Kryptonian reconnaissance plane at that time was almost abandoned, but Lex Luthor was still cautiously groping inside. The original wall was also damaged, and the sound of ZZ's electric current was constantly reminded. The inside of the boat was also filled with stagnant water beyond the calf. The squid-shaped robot that was originally inside the spaceship had also lost its power, and the current spaceship was equivalent to having only a shell. Lex Luthor also came to the central control room that was submerged in water and took out General Zod's master control key that he found in the ruins of the spaceship. Lex Luthor also said that the master control key was inserted into the center console, and the remaining power of the spaceship was also activated. Seeing the lights around him light up, Lex Luthor was also very excited, and Lex Luthor also hurriedly put General Zod's body into the water. Inside the Batcave, Bruce Wayne also began to train against Tang Feng. Bruce began his physical and intellectual training at the age of 11, after rigorous physical training, a specific diet, and biofeedback training. Bruce's body can be said to represent the highest level of normal human physical performance. His strength, speed, endurance, reaction speed, and flexibility surpassed the Olympic champions of the same period. And Bruce doesn't just rely on his body like Batman. Bruce's intelligence made him an excellent detective, strategist, scientist, tactician, and commander. Bruce Wayne is also considered the most analytical person in the world, often making fun of. Bruce studied biology, physics, mathematics, engineering, geography, theology, history, etc. By the age of 21, he had earned degrees in criminology, law, computer science, chemistry, and engineering. At the age of 23, Bruce Wayne gained the ability to adapt to all environments, and he was familiar with security systems and used various blindfolds. Many years ago, Bruce also came to the top of the Tibetan plateau and sought the help of a ninja master. At that time, Bruce was still an impulsive person who only focused on fighting those criminals by force. And through the training of ninja masters, Bruce Wayne also learned how to hide, how to go faster to subdue the enemy. When Bruce Wayne returned to Gotham City again, a Batman who terrified the criminals of Gotham City was born. With the support of the Wayne Group's weapons and equipment, Batman has also become an insurmountable legend. But for Tang Feng, Bruce Wayne is still a deadly Earthling. Facts have also proved that no matter what weapon is used on Earth, it cannot harm Tang Feng. Therefore, the indispensable weapon against Tang Feng is also the kryptonite that Bruce Wayne is constantly searching for. The hardness of kryptonite is too strong at 4.8, and even general cutting equipment cannot polish kryptonite. Bruce also intends to use lasers to polish kryptonite. Now only kryptonite can truly restrict Tang Feng's power. At this time, Alfred walked in and said to Bruce Wayne, Master Wayne, Lex Luthor's dinner is about to begin. I think it's time for you to prepare to leave. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42. After hearing the housekeeper Al's words, Bruce Wayne also raised his head to check the time, but it was the time of the banquet. Generally speaking, two super rich people like Bruce and Luthor have no intersection, but it's because before, in Belarus, Bruce also inquired about all the suspected Supermen on Earth, and those data were in Lex Luthor's computer. So this time Bruce Wayne also accepted Lex Luthor's invitation for the first time, and Bruce's real purpose was to get these data from Lex Luthor's hands. Butler Alfred also asked Bruce Wayne, "Master Wayne, do you want to drive the Batmobile this time?" 99 Bruce also pulled O9's tie and turned his head to Afu and said, "Afu, I'm not such a high-profile person, I'll drive Lamborghini this time." Afu also smiled at Bruce Wayne very meaningfully. Inside the Daily's office planet, Tang Feng was also sorting out relevant reports about Batman, the Vigilante. At this moment, the editor-in-chief of the newspaper also came over and said to Tang Feng, "Please withdraw all these reports about Batman and don't report them." 5 Why? Tang Feng also said to the newspaper president in confusion, "I just want to let people know more about what this so-called social police looks like." The newspaper president also looked directly at Tang Feng and said, "You have no right to judge this vigilante from Gotham City. Lex Luthor is now holding a charity dinner in the city center. Go and follow the reports now, and delete all the reports about Batman you send me." 35 After speaking, the newspaper president also turned his head and left. Tang Feng could only nod helplessly. At this time, Lois also traveled to Syria to report on the war refugees. In the city center of the metropolis, Lex Luthor's charity dinner also continues to lively, and it is rare for successful people from all walks of life to meet again. Bruce Wayne was also holding champagne and excitedly exchanging something with Lex Luthor. After a while, Bruce's phone also rang. Bruce also told Lex Luthor that he would apologize for a moment, and Lex Luthor could definitely only smile in return. "Hey, Afu, have you found it?" Bruce also stood aside and said to the housekeeper on the phone, "Afu." At this moment, Afu is also sitting in the Batcave, and the 3D construction map of Lex Luthor's house is also broadcast on the screen. Afu also said to Bruce, "Master Wayne 073, what you are looking for is downstairs, in the room where you go downstairs and turn left." Bruce also hummed and hung up the phone. He walked downstairs, and Bruce's every move also caught Tang Feng's attention. Tang Feng also heard the conversation between Bruce and the housekeeper Afu through super powerful hearing. Tang Feng at this moment is also very puzzled. What is this Bruce looking for? But Tang Feng is not the only one who knows about this. A sexy woman in red also looked in Bruce's direction and smiled lightly. Then followed up. Chapter 43 Information Theft. After going downstairs, Bruce Wayne did not choose to go to the room where the information was stored first, but instead went downstairs to make sure that there was no threat to him before entering the room where the items were stored. Bruce came to the place where the data was collected and installed the pirated software and settings he had made. Then, he also began to back up the contents of this computer. And Tang Feng also sensed what Bruce wanted to choose to do. Tang Feng also discovered through his own perspective that when he was in the basement, a trace of worry began to appear in his heart. And Tang Feng naturally discovered that this Bruce Wayne was also stealing data from Lex Luthor's computer. Just when Tang Feng wanted to go downstairs to find out, Tang Feng also found a woman coming downstairs. Bruce also hurried out after copying the information and ran into the woman in red. Bruce is also very chivalrously concerned about her, but she also completely ignores such a super rich man like Bruce. Tang Feng also slowly walked over when he saw Bruce approaching. He stretched out his hand to Bruce Wayne and said, "Hello, Mr. Bruce Wayne, I'm a reporter from Planet Daily." "Tang Feng, can I trouble you for a few minutes?" Tang Feng also said to Bruce with a smile. Bruce did not reject Tang Feng either. Bruce stretched out his hands towards Tang Feng and said, "Definitely yes. I heard that Gotham City is not very peaceful recently. There is a vigilante who has been sweeping away some evil forces. Do you know who it is?" Bruce also shook his head slowly and said, "I definitely don't know." Tang Feng also looked at this burly man at this moment, and at this moment Tang Feng also felt more and more that this Bruce Wayne, more and more like the vigilante of Gotham City mentioned in the photo. Bruce also smiled and said, "I don't care about these mandatory police officers." Tang Feng also smiled and nodded, looking at Bruce in front of him. Suddenly, Tang Feng's ears slid into his pockets. Louise, who was interviewing far away in Syria, Tang Feng from at this moment, He also felt that Louise might be in danger. Tang Feng also said to Bruce, "Mr. Wayne, I'll go first." Bruce also nodded. For Bruce, this dinner party can be said to be meaningless except for stealing information, so Bruce is also looking for a reason to leave here. Bruce was also wandering around where the artwork was placed. At this moment, the woman in red also appeared in front of Bruce. Bruce also walked up to the woman, stood beside her, and said, "Vertical bar This Roman handicraft is a fake. This artwork was unearthed a long time ago in the 1980s, and it is still the same now. It is housed in the National Museum." The woman in red also turned around and said to Bruce, "I know." Then she smiled and turned to leave, but Bruce also grabbed the woman's arm and said, "So, what was taken from me just now must be returned to me now." The woman in red also gently leaned into Bruce's ear and said, Chapter 44 Land of Dreams. "I've already put the things you wanted on the armrest of your car, but I also made a copy of the documents. I don't think you'll mind." Bruce also said to the woman, "This file uses the military encryption system, you can't open it." 35 The woman in red shook her head. "This is my business, then goodbye, playboy." Bruce also suddenly felt a little overwhelmed. It turned out that when he ran into this woman in red just now, the storage device that Bruce used was taken away by this woman, and Bruce didn't find out in the first place. Bruce also sighed casually. What is the origin of this woman? Now that he got this information, Bruce no longer wanted to stay on such occasions. Bruce also drove a Lamborghini back to the Batcave. Bruce also said that the cracked hard drive in his hand was connected to the computer, and after entering a few strings of code, the cracked command also started to work. Since it was heavily encrypted, and the military lock was harder to crack, it would take some time to unravel this order. Bruce is also sitting in front of the computer and waiting. Bruce just slowly fell asleep. Yellow sand filled the sky, and a strange roar sounded not far away. Batman also slowly walked down from the top of a mountain. A man dressed as a mercenary also walked towards Batman. "I have everything I want," Batman also said to the mercenary beside him. The mercenary also nodded, and then ordered his subordinates to open the truck carriage. Inside the huge carriage was only a box lying alone. Batman also walked over and slowly opened the box. Green light also emanated from the box and hit Batman's face. Ajay. At this moment, Batman also felt that there was a gun against his spine behind his back. Batman turned his head, and the mercenary said, "I'm sorry." Outside the carriage, all the people hired by Batman were shot to death by a group of people who came out of nowhere. These are fully armed, and even their faces are tightly covered. Batman also screamed when he heard gunshots outside. Batman was also a quick reincarnation, knocked down the gun in the hands of the mercenary, and then used his knee to put it on top of it, causing the mercenary to also lose his combat effectiveness. Batman also jumped out of the car, relying on Batman's skill. These mercenaries are not his opponents, and it is only a matter of time to solve them. But at this moment, there was a gust of sandstorms in the distance, and the sound of mosquitoes flapping their wings magnified 100 times was also quickly approaching Batman. After a while, Batman saw a large group of alien creatures with wings on their backs flying towards him. A buzzing sound also resounded through the earth, and this group of alien creatures also attacked these humans indiscriminately, and Batman also resisted together. But after a while, Batman surrounded more and more aliens. Batman was still struggling to resist so many alien attacks. He gradually couldn't hold on anymore. Chapter 45. When Batman opened his eyes again, he found himself chained in a warehouse. On both sides of him were the alien creatures that attacked him just now. Boom. There was also a person at the door of the warehouse, waiting for the yellow sand to slowly dissipate. Batman could see the figure walking towards him, the one he had always wanted to defeat. Tang Feng, or rather, Superman. Tang Feng at this time was also wearing a black shirt, just like General Zod, and Tang Feng was also slowly walking in front of Bruce. Tang Feng's eyes began to gather hot energy, and the energy burst out, completely melting the alien creatures on both sides of Batman. Tang Feng slowly stretched out his hand and took off Batman's mask. Tang Feng also looked at the mask and smiled strangely. He opened his mouth and said to Bruce, "She is my everything." But you took her away. Tang Feng's hand slowly placed itself on Bruce's chest, that is, he grabbed it. Bruce also suddenly woke up. But the next scene also made Bruce even more confused. In the office, the strong wind blew the documents on the desk everywhere. Bruce, listen to me carefully. I'm Louise Lois, he's the key. A man who seemed to travel through the cracks of time and space also said to Bruce, did I come too early? I came too early. You're right about him. You've always been right. Astonish him. You must find us. Find us. The crack in time and space suddenly closed, and everything in front of him returned to normal. Drop the display screen in front of Bruce also rang, and the cracking of this confidential file was also completed. Bruce was also flipping through the information, and at this moment, there was a document that caught Bruce's attention. Bruce clicked on the file, and the contents of the file also contained information about 4 people suspected of having super abilities. Bruce also clicked on the video file, and the underwater probe in the Atlantic Ocean also captured it. In the depths of the sea of hundreds of meters, a big man with a beard appeared. The big man also noticed the camera, and the picture stopped abruptly again. Begging for flowers. Another video is in a laboratory, where a doctor is working on something similar to a mechanical prosthesis, but suddenly, the circuit in the laboratory seems to be malfunctioning. ZZ's electric current also rang, and suddenly, the face on the wall suddenly opened its eyes. 0. This is the image that keeps flashing, and finally the image goes black and can't see anything. Bruce was also very surprised. Tang Feng just gave Bruce a headache. He didn't expect that there were so many amazing characters on Earth. This also made Bruce think of the image that appeared just now, but Bruce couldn't decide whether this was true or not, and was it his own dream? Bruce continued to click on the rest of the video again. The video was captured on surveillance footage of a convenience store. A robber was robbing a convenience store, and a young man standing next to him also looked at the robber. For some reason, the screen suddenly seemed to freeze for a long time. Chapter 46 Rescue. But after a second or so, the thief in the photo was tied up by Wu-Hua-Da. Bruce was also very puzzled, what was going on, and after a while, Bruce slowed down the video. 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. Bruce tried constantly, until the video was slowed down 1,000 times, and Bruce could see exactly what happened. 077. The young man subdued the thief in an instant, but it took less than a second. Bruce was also completely shocked. A person with super abilities and super high speed? Bruce remembered the image that appeared just now, and Bruce also began to think, this can't be true. Am I going to find them? In a refugee camp in Syria, Louise also came here to conduct an interview with a photographer following her. But for fear of revealing anything, the local reactionaries also hired mercenaries to supervise the 2 of them. Just as they were about to leave after finishing the interview, the local mercenary leader also said to the photographer, show me what you photographed. Louise also looked at the photographer, wondering why the mercenary made such a request. But the expression on the photographer's face at this time was also obviously a little wrong. No, there is something very important here, the photographer also said to the mercenary. But the mercenaries don't care so much. They just reach out their hands to steal the camera, and the photographer is definitely a staunch rebel. At this moment, the mercenary simply took out the gun, put it in his hand, and said, give me the camera. As soon as the mercenary took the camera, it shattered on the ground, and a splinter of the camera fell out. The mercenary raised the gun again and said, who sent you here? The cameraman also kept Louise behind him, took out a pistol from behind and pointed it at the mercenary. I'm an FBI agent. With a bang, before the cameraman could finish speaking, the mercenary directly shot him. At this moment, the mercenary also showed a strange smile. Good luck, Miss Louise. After saying that, the mercenary and his subordinates began to shoot at the reactionaries around the refugee camp. This move also made these reactionaries very confused, and Louise was also frightened and wanted to escape in a hurry. But how can it be so simple? A small leader of the reactionaries also directly grabbed Louise and hid in a room. He shouted, don't come here or I will kill her. In the air, There was a sound explosion that caused the air to burst at the speed of sound. The mercenary leader heard it and said to his subordinates, "He's coming. We should retreat." Tang Feng also landed directly from the sky into the room where the little leader was. The little leader was also obviously frightened. He pointed a gun at Louise's head and shouted, "Don't come here. If you move again, I will kill her." But Tang Feng didn't seem nervous at all. He also gave Louise a wry smile, and Louise understood what he meant. She put her head to the side. Chapter 47. Before dawn. Louise also curled up with a bang, but in a split second, a large number of holes were smashed in the wall behind Louise, and the little leader who was holding Louise by hand also disappeared. Tang Feng also returned to Louise's side and hugged Louise. Tang Feng also carried Louise back to the metropolis, and Louise was still in a state of panic. Tang Feng also brought flowers to Louise's house, and Louise was lying in the bathtub. As soon as Tang Feng entered the door, he found something about him, Superman, playing on TV. What happened in Syria yesterday was also uploaded to the internet by someone unknown, and now almost all the media are accusing Superman of the massacre in Syria. Tang Feng's face also gradually became gloomy. He walked up to Louise and slowly said, "Is what I'm doing right, or I shouldn't exist on Earth at all?" After going through so many things, Tang Feng also began to doubt and no longer have confidence in his own existence and identity. Louise also took Tang Feng's hand. "Trust your own judgment. If you think it's right, I will support you." Tang Feng also looked at Louise with love in his eyes. Tang Feng took out a bouquet of flowers and put them on Louise. Faced with such a scene, Tang Feng also slowly lowered his head and kissed Louise. Ding ding ding, ding ding ding. At this time, Louise's cell phone also rang. Louise glanced at the phone and saw that the caller was the boss of the newspaper. Louise answered the phone, and the boss of the newspaper also said to Louise, "Lex Luthor called and said that his new laboratory wanted to have an interview documentary, and I know that you should rest after what you just went through. But Lex Luthor asked you to be interviewed by name, so I'm going to trouble you." Louise also agreed to this interview. Tang Feng also smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that I came at the wrong time?" Louise also smiled and touched Tang Feng's head and said, "We still have more time." Inside the Batcave, Bruce Wayne also opened the last folder, but there was no video in the last folder. It only had two photos. One was a group photo of a group of special commandos during the American Civil War, and one of them was a strangely dressed woman who caught Bruce's attention. Bruce also seemed to have seen it somewhere in 077. When Bruce Wayne clicked on the next picture, Bruce finally confirmed his guess. This woman was the woman in red at Lex Luthor's dinner before. Bruce couldn't accept it all at once. When he was in Gotham City as Batman, he only had to deal with some neurotics and criminals. Suddenly, there are so many people with super abilities that were previously unimaginable to exist on Earth. Bruce at this moment is also a big headache. At this moment, the housekeeper Afu also came over and said to Bruce, "Master Wayne, the kryptonite has been polished." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.